Welcome back to the Pulse and to our pro player panel. We are discussing Heart of the Swarm. The beta has recently come to a close. Release is a week away, just about, a little more than a week away. And, everybody has their opinions, and we're just sharing a few of those with you guys here today. We just got done talking about most of the Terran changes, and now we're going to talk about some of the Zerg changes. We started to discuss Swarm hosts prior to the break, and then we said, you know what, let's come back to this. So let's jump right back into it. Swarm hosts, we said maybe they're not super hot against mech necessarily, but Ghost User, do they have any use against Terran? And if so, what is it?
It's against mech. Because against bio, they're absolutely useless against any good bio player. Bio is just way too mobile for them, and they don't do much damage at all against bio. The Marines kill them really fast. If there's any use, it's against mech, but I don't feel like they'll be good.
Fuser, have you ever struggled against Swarm hosts in any way, or do you just kind of kill them?
They are imba in some situations, as I said before, but against bio, they are no good. Bio crushes them easily.
Okay, all right. Now, Todd, I feel like you're almost certainly going to have an opinion on the Swarm host and the impacts that it has on the Zerg versus Protoss matchup. So please tell us your thoughts on this unit.
Yes, Swarm hosts are pretty much like mech. They are brand new units that nobody has used much yet. So sometimes it looks very strong, sometimes it looks very weak. I definitely think it can have some good use. We saw Red play very well with those. And I feel maybe a little bit standardize a build with Swarm host into Hydralisks against Protoss, which looked very strong so far. So I definitely think there is a place for Swarm host in Zerg versus Protoss, and it can be pretty hard for me sometimes to deal with them. I used to think that you can just go around the Swarm host, counter-attack with your Mothership Core, kill whatever you can, then recall and fight. But these days, this has been applying a lot less because Zerg will get a lot of Swarm host, and on most maps they can lock you in, especially maps like Akin and Waste or some other maps. And then they will pretty much be ready for this. They will have the watchtowers in position. They can pull back with their Swarm host if they need to. And then behind this, they will be getting sometimes Hydralisks, sometimes Corruptors, all of which do great against the Mothership Core. So if I get my army locked out on the other side of the map and I can't recall, it's never going to go too well, even though I will have force fields to buy me some time. So right now I feel you definitely need to scout the Swarm hosts and go for some kind of very good composition, buy yourself time until you decide that finally you can fight. And also, when Zerg gets Swarm host, a lot of the time they will follow it up by Corruptors. So you would think that you can counter it with a lot of Colossi, which is good against Swarm host, especially because they snipe the Locust very well. But then when your opponent has a whole bunch of Corruptors and you go in there, he will have an Overseer above the Swarm host that will snipe the Observer. So I don't know if Mike has had different experiences than me, but yeah, I feel like sometimes it can be pretty hard against Swarm hosts.
Yeah, I think they definitely have uses EVP, and sometimes they seem really good, and sometimes they seem just kind of okay, and they don't do much and then you lose. But I've seen games where they look super, super good, and Protoss can't deal with them with anything they have. I don't think we figured out exactly how good they are yet, because you have to get good at using them against Protoss more so than Terran. Because against Protoss, you want to use their mobility, I think, and send like a wave out and move them back, and never actually fight a direct engagement with his army, with the Swarm host close to him. And I've seen Jaedong using them really well in some of his games on stream. And I've also seen Hyun use a couple like fast 2-base all-ins with Swarm host, where he just goes like as quick as he can, Swarm host contain, and pushes and makes spines and contains Protoss.
No, I'm really glad that you brought that up, because I think I've talked to Todd about the 2-base Swarm host stuff before. Todd, can you tell us a little bit about that build and what it does?
It's just, if you don't see it coming and you're not really prepared and you play too greedy, you will get punished as Protoss. But I feel it's not as strong as I used to think. It really depends on the map and position and the way it's done. Because we saw Hyun do this actually against Sase in the King of the Hill, hosted by the Good Studio. And Sase just crushed Hyun completely. He reacted very well. He made cannons. It was on Cloud Kingdom. He made cannons on the ledge of his cliff, so above where the Swarm hosts were in the small path. So that bought him a lot of time. And he went for Colossi. And same time, he had one probe sneaked out on the map. I don't know how, but he had it. And he made some pylons out on the map, and he kept sending in units onto the bases of Yon, who was already very low economy and had very committed to the Swarm host through the Nidus he was using, I think. And yeah, Sase just made some Dark Templars, wrecked the economy of Yon, and then had enough Colossi to hold at home and won like that. So in that game, it was one of the games where Swarm host looked very weak. And I think this is because of the map. Even if you use a Nidus, it's going to be a big investment, and you're not going to have that many queens because you usually rush to lair. I really feel like a build where you get a whole bunch of queens, you start working on your crypt threads somewhere with maybe a proxy hatch cancelled and some crypt tumors, and then you bring in the Swarm host to start doing damage. You put in some spores and spines there. On a map like Akinon Waste or Howling Peak, maybe this can be good. But on some other maps, maybe not so much.
Mike, I have been struggling to find a role for the Swarm host in any matchup. I feel like when I'm on 2 bases, I don't have enough gas to make them, and I feel like when I'm on 4 bases, I want to use my gas for other things. What is your opinion on where the Swarm host fits into the different meta games?
I think ZVP, if you use them, unless you're doing like the 2 base all-in that Hyun and I think Tilo have used, then 3 base is the best spot. You want to build a lot of them as quick as you can on 3 bases, and then just push Protoss before they get a maxed out army, before they get that many Colossi, and just keep pushing and use them to get a big advantage. I'm not sure how well it works, I mean, because sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but I think that's the best way to use them. Other than that, I've seen some people use them only making like 8 or 12, and then using them with a normal composition, and just trying to pressure Protoss more than before, and then still use them in a fight, and that works okay. Yeah.
Todd, have you played against Rhett on ladder by any chance? I'm curious if you've played against his Swarm host style, because as you already pointed out, it does look very strong.
Yeah, I played against him just before the beta ended. And I barely, well, I guess I won. I got a good build against her. And I got lucky, I guess.
Secret Todd build?
Yeah.
You know, I just want to mention something. I think 3 base is the most powerful place where Swarm hosts are currently, but I think a lot of protesters are also playing it a little bit wrong. Because when I am playing against Zergs and I'm Protoss, a lot of times I'll do my scouts, my really easy scouts with Mothership Core and also the hallucination. And I'm able to see if my opponent is sort of going Swarm host. And it's not a unit where it's like, oh, let me build up enough for 16 of them, and then I go and push. No, you have to like build them up gradually. As soon as you see one on the map, you just shove your units out in the middle of the map. There's almost no way that they can really like confront that, because they are investing. They're getting that very expensive 200 upgrade for their Swarm hosts, and then on top of that, the regular upgrades, and Swarm hosts are very mineral intensive. So it takes maybe 2 to 3 minutes, I would say. Maybe not that long, but 2 minutes, I would say, to really get a good Swarm host army that can
that's a really good point.
Pushing.
The Swarm host isn't like the Muta.
And
it's not something that you save up for and then make 15 of.
Yeah, and then you can't track the army down consistently with recall out, right? Because I can always go into a really crappy situation, recall out, and then put my army back on the middle of the map, forcing a lot of really terrible positions. So I think Protoss does need to kind of adjust to that a little bit, and once they see Swarm host coming out, no matter what they have, just shove it out in the middle of the map, threaten those counterattacks, know that Swarm hosts aren't nearly as good as defending as they are attacking.
What's up, Kev?
I think that makes total sense what you say, but you shouldn't forget that if Protoss decides to open up with Stargate, which I think in generally we all agree of, Stargate openings are strong against Zerg, that's when Swarm hosts get really strong, and that's when Swarm hosts will be able to get those positions outside of your 3 bases, and that's why Red's timings work so well. Obviously, if you like open up with a very different way, you're going to have a lot more units. If Protoss opens up Stargate, they will never ever have enough units to actually walk in the middle of the map while going up to 3 base and while making or building up infrastructure, getting lots of gates and stuff. They will barely have any units. So I don't think if you open up Stargate, you can ever go out on a map, because then they can literally just make like a handful of links and just surround your army
Kevin,
and kill it.
I did it.
We will definitely be talking more about Stargate later on in the show, as that's a big point of discussion. But we're still talking Zerg stuff, and the other Zerg unit that a lot of people are excited for is the Viper. And it's a unit that really redefines a lot of the way the game of StarCraft is played. Mike, how do you feel about the Viper, and have you been using it in your gameplay?
I used to use it like I guess about a week and a half ago. I was using it almost every ZVP in late game, but I changed my mind and I don't actually like it anymore.
What?
It It works really well if they're going heavy Colossi, or like just a standard Wings of Liberty Colossi Deathball, or like a 3-base timing, that kind of build. And then you just kind of auto-win if you get Vipers. You should never lose to it. But some of the, like, no one plays like that anymore, at least none of the Protoss that I play. They either go super heavy on Blink Stalkers and only get like 1 or 2 Colossi unless you go Swarm Host, or they go like only Blink Stalker Immortal with no Colossi at all. And if they go something like that, then the Vipers are almost useless. Because you can.
What about if you add 2 Infestors to the army?
It's still useless. Because the Fungal only lasts like 4 seconds now. Well, not now, for like a long time. But like that costs a lot of gas to get Viper and Infestor. And you need to have enough Infestors and Vipers to be able to like combo the Fungal and the Blinding Cloud, while your army can actually kill them if you want to like do a combo for that to work. And I don't know. I mean, it's really, really good if they go heavy on Colossi, because you just pull the Colossi and you win the game. But if they go Blink Stalker heavy, then like Blinding Cloud doesn't work at all. They just blink back, and then if you keep attacking forward, you're standing in the cloud. Or they just walk around you in circles, and you can't tie down the army with the Vipers like you could with Infestor. So I don't know.
Well, let's talk about Zerg versus Terran, because my favorite place to use the Viper is in ZVT. I think if you can ever get to that in-game army composition, Viper, Hydralisk, Ultralisk with some Baneling sprinkled in, I think it's hard to lose from there. How do you feel about that statement, Mike?
Yeah, Vipers against Terran are super, super good. Like, with Roach Hydra especially, you can kind of crush over, like, Biotank armies, and mech armies too, if you just spam Blinding Clouds over half of their stuff, and then you just win the game.
Yeah, but the magic is that you should never siege your tanks before the Vipers are dead. That's why you have like a 12 Vikings to shoot the Vipers down, and then you just full back, and the Roaches and Hydras are on the cloud. And
yeah, I mean, against Bio more so. With like Roach Hydra, with Vipers against Bio, you can kind of crush over any Biotank unit army composition just by like blinding clouding all the tanks, and then the Roach Hydra just wins. Against Mech, they can be good if Terran clumps their tanks. They can still be like really good if you make like 8 or 10 of them, and just ignore the Vikings and Blinding Cloud as much as you can before they die, and then just try to kill their whole army. But they die pretty quick to Vikings too, so I'm not sure about how good they will be against Mech if Terrans have Vikings to shoot them.
You know, we raised a lot of issues when we talked about Terran units and said, hey, maybe these are some things that need to change, but I don't feel like anybody is of the consensus that Zerg has anything that's too strong. Do either of my non-Zerg panelists have an opinion on that?
Ultralisk. I am
Imba.
Zerg. Yeah, all the Terran players I know say Ultralisk or Imba.
I think Vipers can be good as well. Maybe better than Swarm Host sometimes, but I mean, they have a clear counter with High Templars, so one unit is not too strong, but there is some strategies that are very strong. For example, I played Cozy User for some match, I remember, and he went for like a 16 minutes timing with Mass Roach, Hydralisk, and Viper, and that's maybe my Storm was, I mean, my High Templars were late, but that's the time where you start having High Templars. So if you have just 2, usually you won't have enough to hold.
You can't do High Templar against it. I don't think it works. If you go like Colossi Deathball and then just add High Templar in, you always lose to that timing. Because you can kind of keep the Vipers away from the Templar and still pull the Colossi out. Or you can just Blinding Cloud the army. And if the Templar can't feedback, you're not going to have Storm then, so they're just useless. And you spend all this money.
You're just saying Viper is OP.
No, but if you go like Colossi Deathball, then Viper always wins. But if they go like Blink Stalker Immortal and no Colossi, unless you go Swarm Host, or if you just go like only Blink Stalker with like 1 or 2 Colossi and a couple Immortals, then Vipers suck against that, even without High Templar.
There goes my secret build.
So your secret build is Colossus Deathball. Because I think Protoss players have been doing that for like 3 years now.
No, man, he just explained something different. You get less Colossi. But yeah, I agree in general that Colossi play seems worse in Heart of the Swarm. In Wings of Liberty, if you could get up to 200 supply with 2-0 attack upgrades or 3-0 at the 15th minute or 16th minute, and you were maxed on Mass Stalkers, couple Sentries, couple Immortals, and 3 Colossi, there was no ground army that could stop you. You could even sometimes attack into spines and win against spines plus a max Zerg army with infestors. But now that's totally different. I mean, there was a game like this where I went for this style and I attacked against a Zerg. He had a couple of Vipers. He abducted all of my Colossi before the fight even started. I lost all my Colossi and then I was down to 160 supply with no Colossi and full Stalkers against Roach Hydra discs. So, I mean, you can't really attack after that.
Yeah,
So,
like that style from Wings of Liberty, it never works. Like Vipers just crush it every time.
yeah, in Heart of the Swarm, it doesn't.
So I got a question for you guys. With that like 14 to 17 minute push where you push out with like mass stalkers and colossi, that was normally to keep Zerg in check, to make sure that they weren't just expanding super aggressively. Are there still options for Protoss, given now the Viper's existence and kind of that Colossus rush being removed from the game? Are there still alternatives for Protoss to do that same type of poke out to make sure Zergs aren't just taking the entire map?
The old pre-brood lord timing.
Yeah, the pre-brood lord.
Yeah, just like Blinkstalker Immortal without Colossi is the same thing, I guess. People did it before sometimes, but you don't actually need the Colossi unless they go Swarm Host. So you can just go like 4 or 5 Immortals, maybe even 6, and mostly like all Blinkstalker is some Sentry.
But
and
then
you can use that.
then you just substitute the Vipers, the Vipers with Infestors, and you gotta
Roach Infestor.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no one goes Infestors. Well, I mean, if you go Infestors, they're not actually that good anymore, because Protoss will just sit back, and then they can't actually get Colossi.
If a Protoss doesn't get Colossi, it means you were going to Storm usually. And that does not go very well for Zerg. She's messing on Roach Hydra and Infestor, and then both of them are maxed and matched on upgrades.
Yeah, plus it cost a lot, actually, to get Roach Hydra and Infestor. Because if you get Hydras now, you have both the Hydra upgrades, and then Infestors obviously cost a lot of gas by itself. I don't think anyone I've seen use Roach Hydra Infestor now.
So can I ask you, I mean, it sounds like this is a really powerful push. What do you actually go to stop something like a Mass Blinkstalker Immortal Sentry push?
You can still go, like, usually just go Roach Thling with well, if it's just Blinkstalker Immortal, you want Hydras and Swarm Host. Or like Hydra Ling, Roach. Or kind of just like Spines and whatever units you want.
Just make whatever you want. Make a lot of it.
I saw.
Just build Zerg stuff and win, says Kosu User.
You did an interview, right, Michael? I think I saw like for Millennium or something, where you were saying that basically Roachling is like the best.
Yeah, like the last week, I don't actually care about telling what builds I do now ZVP, because I don't have to play any ZVP for like who knows how long, since MLG...
You definitely kept it real in that interview, though.
Yeah.
Roachling.
Roachling is the best thing against Protoss now, I think. Because with the Mothership Core and like every Protoss opening a Stargate, they spend a lot of money. Well, they spend a bit more than before to get a Mothership Core, and then they spend a lot to get lots of Stargate units on 2 base. So if you just go heavy Roachling, you can keep them from taking a third for a long time on most maps, and Roachling is still just as good unless they have a third base.
Are you talking like Roachling, like all in off 35 drones? Are you talking like Roachling off 3 bases?
Oh, 3 base.
Okay. Okay.
And
I gotcha.
maybe even with less drones on 3 bases than before, though.
Okay.
Like, what I've been doing the last week that almost always wins is I just go 2 base, full drone saturation, 4 gas, with a 3rd base and only like 5 or 7 drones in it, and like mass amounts of speed rush speedling early in the game. And then, since you have 4 gas and you only go like 16 rushes, you bank up gas to like 1500, and then you go Spire and build like 20 Mutalisk.
I can see that being really good.
It's like the best thing against Protoss now, I think. Either that or just pure Roach thing.
Well, one Zerg unit that you guys all mentioned as a possible OP is the Ultralisk Fuser. We haven't heard from you in a little while, so I want to hear what's your opinion on the Ultralisk right now. And
well, it kills all the Marines instantly, so it's kind of good.
It's kind of good. All right, that's Fuser's
That's all I
opinion.
can
Thanks,
say.
Fuser.
I can't make bio anymore too much on late game because the Marines are useless. Like in Winds of Liberty, you used Marines to tank the Ultralisk while the Marauders are killing them, but it's not working anymore.
Yeah, if you go bio, you need to be like incredibly Marauder heavy when they go Ultralisk, or you just lose.
Do you feel like the Zerg versus Terran matchup is going in a way where Terran is going to be forced to mech?
No, I think they can still do bio every game.
Okay.
I think Biomine is kind of good as well.
Yeah, 4GG either goes mech or bio mine. He never goes bio siege tank anymore. And pure bio with Widow Mines is pretty good, I think.
Yeah, the old pushes with a couple of medevacs, like 16 Marines and a couple of Widow Mines, those are really hard to deal with. Like those used to come with Marines and Hellions, but now with Widow Mines instead, those can be quite a headache.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, guys, I think that's going to kind of do it for our... Oh, quick, Kev's got a question?
Yeah, I just want to ask you on, how do you feel that the Ultralisk has sort of like had its effect on PvZ? Because I played a couple of games, couple of late game scenarios where in the old days you see this Ultralisk army and then you're like, okay, you attack move and you have like 4 or 5 Immortals and a couple of Colossus, and then you're like, okay, let's go back to my pylon, let me wipe in the reinforcements. Then I come back and I see that my entire army is dead. It's like if I don't have Void Rays, I have a really, really tough time killing Ultras. How do you feel about it?
Really? I didn't feel like they got buffed that much. I thought that as Protoss is much easier than for Terran, where Ultralisk completely destroy Marines compared to before. I kind of feel like if you just go for Archons and Immortals heavy and you just max, those Ultras are going to kind of feel useless unless you fight in a very open space. So you can just be careful about that. So
I think
I'm not sure exactly.
I think
Yeah,
I think you're wrong, because I mean it seems like that, but if you make like 4 Vipers with your Ultralisk, like after you get the Ultras, you just use Abduct on all the Immortals, and then you can kill the whole army with your Ultralisk.
I guess you make it sound pretty good, but if you have some Templars, I feel like you should always be able to feed back those Vipers. If you keep your Templars near the front line of your army, they will almost always be in range to feed back those Vipers on time before getting anything abducted. But Ultralisk plus Blinding Clouds sounds kind of scary.
Yeah, like
I've faced it before, and
it's good, but like Abduct is better in like almost every situation. Because if you abduct the Immortals, the Ultralisk kill the whole Protoss army if they only have ground, even without Blinding Clouds. But if you Blinding Cloud and use all your energy, and then they like somehow back up a bit, or they still have a lot of Immortals, then all the Ultralisk will still usually die.
Yeah, I definitely didn't want to make it sound like I think it's too strong, but I do think it's like a world of difference, because like in the old days in Wings of Liberty, once you had that Protoss ball with 4 or 5 Immortals, couple of Archons, I mean, it was kind of a joke whenever you faced Ultras. You're just like, yes, no, Broodlord Infestor. But I feel like in Heart of the Swarm, it's actually like an army that you seriously have to consider of like, okay, I'm going to have to do this well. I definitely don't feel that it's overpowered, but they are definitely so much more useful in my opinion right now than they were before.
Yeah, I think the only thing that makes Zerg not use Ultralisk more is that a lot of Protoss go like Void Ray heavy now. So.
Yeah, Void Rays are extremely good against the Ultras.
Yeah.
I did notice that.
Cool. Do you guys have anything else you want to add on the Zerg units before we head into our next break and get ready to talk Protoss?
I was just going to ask something about...
Oh, Mutalisk!
You said that we are going to talk about Protoss, we can talk it about later.
Mike wants to talk about Mutas.
Mutalisk against Protoss are way better than they were before, mostly because of the hit point regen, even though the speed is a bit better. The hit point regen means that Psystorm is so bad against them now, because you're never going to kill Mutalisk with Psystorm. You'll just weaken them a bit and then they fully heal in like 10 seconds.
I have such a mixed opinion on this. A Protoss player that opens up 1 Stargate, makes Oracles and Void Rays, is going to get crushed by a Muta. But there's also Protoss players who are getting 2 Stargates pretty fast. Or 4 Stargates. But in that kind of a situation, it doesn't matter how many Mutas you make initially because they can chrono out Phoenixes. What do you think, Mike?
I don't think 2 Stargate's good. No one will do it once the game is farther. Because it works, like it hard counters Mutalisk basically. It'll always be Mutalisk. But if they do heavy Roach Ling, and you do 2 Stargate, you'll never take a 3rd until the game's already over.
You're all about this Roach Ling. I really am sad that the beta's down because I want to go play with it. But we're going to
kind of what I told you back then as well, though.
Yeah, it is. Same thing.
I want to ask one thing.
Sure you can keep up the injects, man?
It's going to be hard, man. It's going to be tough. You're going to have to make extra queens.
I was watching Sleep play against White Raw, and White Raw, of course, going his mass air. And we'll get into PvZ mass air a little bit later, but do you think that mutas are enough of a buff to compensate for, I guess, the weakness of the current Corruptor state, just relative to the other races, with the accessibility to a Hunter-Seeker missile, and of course Void Rays being basically the new Infestor, where it transitions you into endgame nicely, and it actually has application there. Do you feel like Zerg Air is good enough at the current state?
No, I think they're like, the Mutalisk buff doesn't actually affect like the, I guess how it plays out with like late game Air Toss and Air Terran, because you can't actually use Mutalisk to fight either of those. You can use them to harass, and you can make lots of them and run around the map and kill stuff.
You can use them to win games before that.
Yeah, you can never use them in a direct fight and win against either Sky Toss or a Sky Terran. So like, even though it's a buff to Zerg, it doesn't like impact how the late game. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, and that's another question to think about. Is there an issue that exists when we talk about end game? Can a Zerg army be competitive at the end game?
To be totally honest, I think Zerg army can't never beat Mass Air Terran late game.
Yeah, that's what like Air Terran late game can just kill everything Zerg has if they get there.
Yes,
like,
but that's like a plus 40-minute game. But
yeah.
Sounds like my type of game.
But it also promotes that kind of gameplay that we can agree that we don't like. We make fun of Daybreak games all the time because it creates these situations where Terran says, okay, if I can just survive until this point, I'm going to win. You know, and that certainly indicates an issue, right?
Maybe. Because, like, no one's going to go for it if there's a good chance they don't survive until then. At least not at high level.
It all depends on the maps, man.
Yeah, so much of that map.
That's true.
Like a nuclear city, you play against Hydra or whatsoever, I don't really care which Zerg it is. You make like a tons of mines, tons of planetary forces, tons of siege tanks, a lot of Ravens, a lot of Vikings, then you
And
just
then you will just leave.
Yeah. You play your side of the map and make like a 20 orbital commands, and Zerg can't do anything.
I think next show we should get Greg on and ask how he feels about Fuser.
I think we should have just have them both on the set. Just Greg and Fuser sitting next to each other. See how long it takes before they start punching each other. Fuser thought that was really funny, guys.
Found European Day 9.
All right, we're going to take a very short break. When we get back, we're going to be talking about Protoss, guys. Don't go anywhere. Our last segment of the panel when we get back.